What happens when one of the most unpredictable minds in gaming joins forces with one of the most renowned names in hardware? When a creator known for building worlds decides to design an object within one? Hideo Kojima changed how games are told. ASUS changed how they're powered. So what happens when those obsessions collide? You end up with what might be one of the strangest but most fascinating pieces of tech I have ever used. So this is the ROG Flow Z13 Kojima Productions Edition, or the Flow Z13 KJP. When ASUS reached out about sending one of these over, I didn't really hesitate. Part of this is practical. As you can see, I don't own a gaming PC. There's no glowing tower in the corner of my office over here. Personally, I've always leaned towards Mac for my creative work, and for gaming, handhelds, as you guys know, and consoles have just always been my preference. So the idea of spending real time with something this powerful and this form factor was already interesting to me. But the real reason was Kojima. Fewer names are more recognized in the video game industry than Hideo Kojima. I've said this before on the channel, but Metal Gear Solid was foundational for me. It completely changed the way that I looked at video games. So when I heard that Kojima collaborated with ASUS on a computer, I was stoked. It was as if ASUS had asked me specifically.
Have you ever had a dream that
Now, while ASUS did graciously provide me with this machine, there was no financial sponsorship tied to this video, so the thoughts and the views that are expressed in this video are purely my own. So although we typically cover handhelds here, this felt less like a standard review opportunity for me and more like something I genuinely wanted to explore. What's under the hood? How does it perform? And ultimately, who's it for? Thanks for being here, butts. Let's get into it. Now, before we jump into the fun tech specs, let's start with the exterior. The first thing you notice is that this doesn't exactly try to blend in. The chassis is CNC milled aluminum with carbon fiber accents, sharp angular cutouts, and laser-etched vents that feel futuristic. The color palette leans into darker metallic tones, gunmetal grays, and gold accents that give the machine a very industrial look. Nothing about it is rounded or soft, it's all hard lines and sharp geometry. And you can see artist Yoji Shinkawa's influence in that silhouette, it almost feels armored. If you're not familiar, Shinkawa is the artist behind Metal Gear and Death Stranding. He's shaped the visual identity of Kojima's worlds for decades, so having his hand in the physical design here makes sense. That sharp futuristic edge carries over into the hardware. And yet, under all that attitude, this is the 13.4-inch tablet. It's about 15 millimeters thick and 1.25 kilograms without the keyboard. But when you pick it up, it's a lot lighter than it looks, which is funny because visually it presents itself like something you'd be picking up at a gym. The built-in kickstand lets you prop it up at different angles, so depending on how you're using it, it can behave like a traditional laptop, a media tablet, or something closer to a compact desktop setup when you plug it in and use your own peripherals. The glare-resistant Gorilla Glass touchscreen is a 13.4-inch 2.5K 180Hz ROG Nebula panel. Ooh, that's a mouthful. With a 16:10 aspect ratio and full DCI-P3 color coverage and up to 500 nits of brightness. Now, if you're like me and some of that tech jargon flies right over your head, what that means is...
Can't hear you.
In normal terms, it means it's sharp, fast, and color accurate enough for creative work. If you're a video editor like me, this display will get the job done. It also supports touch and stylus input too, so it's not locked into one use case. Now, port selection is actually better than I expected for a machine this thin. You get HDMI 2.1, 2 USB-C ports with DisplayPort 2.1 support and 100-watt power delivery, a full-size USB-A port, and a micro SD card reader. All of this rendering dongles unnecessary. The audio is also surprisingly solid. It has a quad speaker setup with smart amp support and Dolby Atmos. It's not replacing a full desk speaker setup, but for watching content, editing on the go, or even casual gaming without headphones, it holds its own. It doesn't feel like an afterthought here. On the back of the machine is a 13-megapixel camera should you feel inclined to take photos with this thing while you're out. I don't think I've ever used the rear camera on a tablet before, but hey, you never know. Next to the front-facing 5-megapixel infrared camera is a 3-array mic that does a good job using AI noise cancellation so you sound clear to your buds on Discord. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep, definitely.
Nice. Hey, really quick, how does the mic sound?
It's not bad. It doesn't sound like
Alrighty. The keycaps use custom typography that matches the overall design language, and the color accents tie into the whole aesthetic. It's also got RGB backlighting so you can dial in whatever mood you're feeling that day. And they didn't stop the design at the device itself. You can charge the 70 watt-hour battery using the included 200 watt power adapter, which does support fast charging from 0 to 50 in 30 minutes. And then lastly, this thing comes packaged in a custom suitcase that looks straight out of Death Stranding. It's got some small touches of Kojima Productions branding, and carrying it around in this thing makes me feel like Norman Reedus delivering a package. It's pretty lightweight, but it does feel solid and protective. So all of those elements together, the typography, the material choices, the case, the adapter, create a cohesive identity. Whether you love the aesthetic or not, you have to agree that it's consistent throughout, and personally, I admire the full send dedication. So we spent a good deal talking about the looks, but as we all know,
beauty is only skin deep. It's what's inside that counts.
Underneath all of that metal is AMD's Ryzen AI Max Plus 395. It's a 16-core processor with integrated Radeon 8060S graphics, and everything runs on a single chip. Instead of having a separate CPU and GPU with their own dedicated memory, everything shares one large pool of 128 gigabytes of unified memory. Damn! And it dynamically shifts depending on what you're doing. Now, gaming performance, the part we all want to know about.
It's about damn time.
Seja muito feliz com a escolha dela.
Is surprisingly strong, especially considering it doesn't have a dedicated GPU. I tested a mix of games across different genres because I didn't want to cherry pick the easy wins. With indie titles like Hades 2 and Dave the Diver, it didn't even flinch. The frame rates were high, the fans stayed reasonable, and it never felt like this system was breaking a sweat. And then I moved on to some heavier stuff. Forza Horizon 5, with most settings on medium to high and no frame generation, averaged around 175 frames per second. On a 180Hz display, that's exactly what you want to see. It takes advantage of this display and it looks stunning. Final Fantasy VII Remake, set to high, maintained right around 90 FPS consistently, which felt really great in motion. Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is a little newer with most settings on high and no FSR, hovered around 60 frames per second. Once I enabled ray tracing, you could see it start to dip, which does feel fair for integrated graphics. And then I tested out my favorite game in the last couple of years, Expedition 33.
Those who come after.
Was where I saw it work a bit harder. With most settings on medium, the machine was dipping into the high 40s and upper 50s, but with FSR set to quality, I was able to hold around 90 FPS. It wasn't effortless, but it was stable and completely playable, and it still looked really great. For all of these, I left the display on the default resolution, and I ran the system in turbo within Armory Crate, which is an included program that allows you to make hardware performance adjustments and memory allocation. This was my first time using something like this. Coming from the Mac side, there's not really anything like it, but I found it really intuitive, and it's a cool thing to have for tinkerers. Now, I will admit, on turbo mode, the fans were screaming. But the app is very transparent that in turbo mode, it does prioritize maximum performance above all else. And that was a sacrifice I was willing to make because I really wanted to see what the machine was capable of. But for average day-to-day, I would probably be using something like silent mode, which really is silent. Now, it is worth mentioning that the machine ships with VRAM set to 4 GB by default. I bumped it up to 32 GB simply because I could. Realistically, 16 GB would probably be more than enough for most scenarios. Across the board, gaming-wise, what impressed me more than the numbers was just the consistency. Once you dial in sensible settings, it runs just fine. There were no wild spikes or strange instability. Everything just runs very smooth. Now, lastly, it includes a dedicated NPU, that's a
Neural Processing Unit.
And it's essentially built to handle AI-related tasks and large language models, if that's your field, on the machine itself instead of pushing everything to the cloud. So the machine is built to support modern AI features that, whether you like it or not, is becoming more common in Windows. So with all of that, from hardware to performance, we're left with one more question.
You want
Who is this for?
So the more time I spent with this machine, the more its audience came into focus. This feels designed for a very specific kind of player. If you're deep into Kojima's work, if Death Stranding or Metal Gear means something to you, there's an added layer here that other machines simply won't have. The Shinkawa-inspired design, the custom typography, the case, the cohesive branding throughout, this all carries more weight when you know where it's coming from, which I think is something not the average person would understand.
I still don't get it.
And the fact that it's backed by legitimate performance makes this more than just a collector's piece. At the same time, this isn't the most neutral or subtle way into PC gaming. There are other machines out there with similar performance without this collaboration identity attached to it. If your only priority is value per dollar, then you'll likely compare your options carefully. But if you appreciate distinctive hardware, if you like tech that feels authored rather than generic, then I think this hits a very specific sweet spot. It's portable, it's powerful, and it has a personality that most gaming devices won't even attempt. And if you're a super fan, the ecosystem goes even further. ROG also offers matching Kojima Productions accessories, including a themed mouse, a headset, and a mouse pad, so you can build out a full setup around the same design language if that appeals to you. So to me, this feels less like a mass market device and more like a statement piece that also happens to perform very well. It's for the player who wants their hardware to reflect what they love and still run everything they throw at it. There is a phrase printed along the edge of the device and on the suitcase that it ships in. For Ludens Who Dare. Kojima Productions uses the word Ludens to describe those who play. It's rooted in the idea that we're not just thinkers, but creators, participants in the worlds we step into. And that philosophy feels baked into this entire device. Yes, the performance is there, but what makes it different is that it doesn't feel generic. It feels authored. More than being assembled for benchmarks, it's built around an idea. And for Ludens Who Dare, this one makes sense.
You want me to tell you how this mic sounds, eh?
I'm an artist here.
This is like the first and last time he's gonna ask for our help for our voices.
Oh, this is great.